Hey everyone, my name's David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas obviously here on Facebook, on Instagram, Pinterest, and a variety of other platforms when you search for my name, which is David Rao or Make Moments Matter. You can also find my ideas on my podcast, which is Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast, available in the Apple Podcast Store and on Spotify and SoundCloud and a bunch of other places. Well, I'm here in my classroom today because I wanted to share with you just a little bit about how I include a hand drum experience with my kindergartners and my second graders, something that I can do sort of at the beginning of class that's really simple, that integrates with what I'm already doing, but gives us a chance to use instruments right away. You know, it's nice. I've been doing these Musical Monday videos every Monday night live at 8 Eastern where I share all my lesson plans and things. But it's also nice to like see into another person's classroom. And I can't show you exactly what I do with my students because of, FERPA regulations, but I can show you the process here in my classroom. So I'm here in my actual real classroom with my real instruments, and it's a little messy and whatever, and the lighting's weird, but I wanted to just show you sort of how I use the hand drums and how I pass them out and how I turn them back in, because I feel like a lot of times it's those procedure things that are just the most stressful, and they can go wrong and can cause problems later. So I just want to show you what I do, and maybe you take some ideas, or maybe you're like, that wouldn't work for my classroom. I get it, but I thought I would share anyway. So when I start with kids, my kindergarten, first and second grade, I meet them at the door with a ukulele and I sing a little circle song. They come in, and basically it's just a little song, and I've shared about it on my Musical Mondays video, but it's just a little song to get them in, and then they seat themselves at the end of the song. So when I turn around at the door, if I have to talk to their teacher or whatever, by the time I'm done and I turn around, they should have made their circle, all made a circle, and then sit down. It's a little tricky in my classroom because, as you can maybe see, I don't have carpet. I have like 3 rugs that are sort of like shoved together to make one space that we can use, and we use the tile and whatever too. But what's tricky is the circle really turns into like a square circle. Somebody called it a squircle once because it's really more of a square, but whatever, we just make our circle and we sit down. And what I usually start with kids is I just start with a copycat game. And we say, copycat, copycat, 1, 2, 3. Do what I do after me. Anything I do, you do the same. That's how you play the copycat game. We're at the point now where I can just say, copycat, copycat, and they launch into the poem because they know it and they've done it. We do it every class. That's how we start class. So usually after we do the poem once, I'll clap and I'll let them repeat me. Then they go, then they go. Then they go, then they go. That's normally where I do. I start with clapping because kids are so used to it. And a lot of times I start with the bad clap, which like every homeroom teacher in the world uses. But then after that I do, different versions of things. But I start with that one because they're used to hearing that first. Okay, so then after, 5 or 6 or 7 examples, we'll do the poem again. Copycat, copycat, 1, 2, 3. Do what I do after me. Anything I do, you do the same. That's how you play the copycat game. The second time, I won't do clapping, I'll do something different. Usually it's like a vocal exploration. And I'll take my hand and I'll go, whoop, and they'll go, whoop, and I'll go, ooh, and I'll go, ooh. And I might do something different. I might go, woo, and they'll do that, and I'll go, woo, that, and then woo, and we do, a bunch of different examples. They love the really silly ones, like when I go, ooh, and they go, ooh, and I go, ooh, and they go, ooh, and then I go, ooh, splat. They love that one. That's one of their favorites. Anyway, we do some sort of vocal exploration. I usually try and tie in an actual kinesthetic movement because I want them to experience physical high and physical low as they're going high and going low. Then we do copycat again. Usually we'll do padding. Sometimes I'll do something silly like, and they repeat. And then I go, and they repeat. And I go, and they repeat. And then I go, and they repeat. And I'll do, and they repeat, and do just things different ways. It's a lot of exploration, but it takes a second, and it's really fun, and they like doing it. Okay, and so then usually we'll do maybe 4 different things, like a clap, vocal exploration, padding, and maybe tapping our head or crossing our arms or doing something else, and then we'll move on from there. Usually we'll go into, our attendance or whatever, sing back and forth or start a song, and we go from there. Recently, I've added in hand drums. So when they come in on those days, they'll come in, we'll do copycat, and the first one I do instead of clapping is patting. We pat, they repeat. We pat, and even with patting, I'll do different patterns. And sometimes I'll start with hands together, and I'll be, I can tell who's really watching because they're doing exactly like me, and they'll realize, okay, I'm doing hands together. And then maybe I'll do, and they'll do one hand, and I'll do, and they'll do the one hand, then I'll switch hands. And then maybe I'll do alternating hands or whatever, but it gives them a chance to really watch and match what I'm doing. But I start with patting. Then we'll do copycat, copycat. Then I'll do a vocal exploration, copycat, copycat. And then I'll bring in the hand drums. Eventually you could add in solfege or something like that. And I say, I want to start with a little bit of clapping, but we're not going to do like clapping for like a sporting game. Like if you went to a football game and somebody did something great, you go like that, right? And they clap like that. Say if you go to like the Atlanta Symphony or Taylor Swift or Bruno Mars, like a concert, you'd clap just like this, and they clap like that. And I say, great. If somebody gives a speech or wins the spelling bee, you'd clap with both hands moving like this. And they go, yeah. And I say, but there's a musical clap. And here's how we do our musical clap. One hand stays on the side, and it stays right there, and you don't move it. It relaxes. The other hand does all the work. It's the only one moving. This one stays here. Let's try a musical clap. They do it. They do it. We do 3 or 4 of those, and I say, great, now switch hands. So they try it the other way. And then I say, choose whichever one is most comfortable. They try it. I say, that's so great, because in just a second, that one hand that hasn't done anything, I'm going to give it a job. So let's make sure that it knows how to, it does it. So this is the only one moving. And then I say, here's what I'm going to do. That hand that's not moving, now its job is to hold a drum. That's it. It's not going to move. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to hold the drum. So now, when this hand moves, it's going to strike the drum, but that hand just stays there. I would not move both. I just move one. So then I play and they clap, and I play and they clap. So they get used to responding with a clap. Then I say, I'm going to hand out drums to some kids. Not to all kids, to some kids. And if you get a drum, what you're going to do is you're going to hold it in your stationary hand, the hand that doesn't move, and your other hand will play. So when I hand out drums to everyone, you'll get a play. If you don't get a drum, you can use your hand. You can just clap back, just like you have been. But I'm going to hand out drums, and I want to see if you can figure out who gets drums and why. So then I'll go to my circle, and I don't know, wherever I start, I'll do one kid, and I'll hand it out, and I skip a kid, I do the next kid, I skip a kid, I go to the next one, until I've handed out to every other kid throughout the whole class. I have enough drums. I have 3 sets of 5, so I'm able to do that. If you have less drums than that, you could do every 3rd kid, every 4th kid, and usually I ask, as I'm handing them out, I say, remember, only some of the kids are going to get them, and see if you can figure out who gets them and why. And a lot of times kids say, like, it's the kids who aren't talking. And I say, nope, that's a great guess. But no, it's not those kids. Who's getting the drums and why? And eventually they figure out, they say, like, you're skipping one, or you're going every other kid. Usually they say you're skip counting, because that's what they're used to in their classroom. And I say, yeah, I'm skipping. I'm going drum, no drum, drum, no drum. If they don't get it, I might say, look for a pattern. See if you can see a pattern and who's getting the drum. So then we skip around and we do different things. Well, then we have drums, and so I have a drum, and they all have drums, and so I play, and they echo, and I play, and they echo. And I do maybe 4 or 5, me, them, me, them, me, them, right? Okay, and I make sure they're holding in their hand, and they're playing this. And I might say, these are special drums called hand drums. They don't work on the floor, and they're holding their drums. I put mine down, I say, just watch, and I play it, and obviously it's going to be sort of muted because it doesn't make a sound as well on the ground, and then I pick it up and I play it. Doesn't it sound better? Yes, it sounds better. Okay, so then we do it back and forth a few times. Then I say, hold the drum with both hands, and I want you to hand the drum to the person on your left. Well, that doesn't mean anything to 1st graders or 2nd graders, because they could never remember left and right. So as I'm saying that, I'm doing this. Hand it to the person on your left, and I walk around the entire circle to show them what direction left is. And so I move around, and they get the idea, and I'm like, this is left, I get all the way around. Usually once I go all the way around, then I'll end myself in a different place. So if before I was standing right here outside the circle, I'll maybe go around all the way, and then I'll end up next to these kids. I do that on purpose because I want them to get different perspectives, so one kid isn't doing this with their neck craned the whole time. But I also do that so that the kids on that side know they're also accountable. The kids over there know they're also accountable, and that I am moving, and if I'm moving, maybe there's a kid who's causing trouble. I'll go stand right next to them. So then the next kid gets to try, and I have every other kid has a drum. So at this point now everyone has a drum at least once. So I do back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then usually at this point I notice if it's the first time or second time, or even if it's not, kids are playing really hard. I say, great, okay, now take your drum with both hands, turn it over, and put it head down on the ground. So they do. And I say, great, now I want you to clap just like me, just exactly like me. And I do. They do that. I go, great, now this one. And they do that one. I say, great, now this one. And I usually make a face. And they do it, and they go, ooh, ah. And I go, does that hurt a little bit? Does it tingle a little bit? They say, yeah. I say, right. Remember, though, we said the head of the drum. So then, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on the board, but way over here on the board, I have like a stick man, and I hold up the drum on top of the stick man, and they see that that's his head and his body and stuff come down. It's sort of hard to see that from far away. But I use this as the head, and I put it on a stick man's body over on the whiteboard. And kids are like, oh, it's his head. And I said, remember when I said you put the drum head down? This is the drum's head. So if you hit that hard, is that gonna make the drum feel good, or is that gonna hurt? And they go, oh, it's gonna hurt. Yeah, so when you hit so hard, and I say, don't do it, just listen. That even hurts my ears. And because, you know, some I don't know why, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they're like, ooh, it hurts my ears. They're very sensitive. So I do that, and I say it even hurts your ears, and it hurts the head of the drum. So please don't hit so hard. So then I let them play again. And then what we do after that is then I rotate a couple more times. I try and make sure that each kid gets a drum at least twice. So for me, that means first rotation, second rotation. Third rotation means that a kid gets a drum again. Fourth rotation means that the second kid gets a drum again, because I'm doing every other kid. I hope that makes sense in your heads. It's like it does mine. But I want every kid to get at least 2 different drums, because with my drums, I have drums that come in these 5 sizes, right? So if I didn't rotate, the kid who had this drum would be really upset they didn't get to try this one. So if I rotate and each kid gets 2 different drums, they might only get the little baby one and the next size up, but at least then they won't feel like they only got the tiny one. So I try and at least rotate 2 times. I try and do a kid getting a drum 3 times in one class if possible, because then you get just more kids on a drum. But it really depends on how well they're doing, how well they're picking up, and how nice they are to the drum. I mean, it really depends. So as I'm handing out, I usually hand out smallest, next, you know, on up, so that the biggest drums get handed out the last. And for me, it sort of works out that somehow I, for my example drum, always get like the very biggest one, which is great, because for kindergarten, first and second grade, it's very hard for them to actually hold this and play it. So it's actually okay for them to have the smaller ones, because they just can't handle this one quite as well. Even for the older kids, it's hard to hold it and play. It's unwieldy and it's heavier. So usually, you know, the kids get the smaller drums as we rotate around. But when it's time to hand them back in, and like I said, I try and usually do each kid gets drums 2 times or 3 times if possible. And when I keep the echoing short, like if, you know, for one rotation, I'll do pattern, repeat, pattern, repeat, pattern, repeat, pattern, repeat, 4, maybe 5 or 6 of those. Pattern, repeat, pattern, repeat. So they won't have the drum for more than maybe 45 seconds before I say, hold the drum with both hands, rotate to your left. Hold the drum with, you know. So they're not having it for very long, so they don't have long enough to like really act out. But if I do that for, you know, 45 seconds for each rotation, this whole experience takes less than about 10 minutes. When it's time to put away, I have another way to put away. What I've done with my hand drums, and I showed this on Instagram, but I don't think I've ever showed it on Facebook. Inside the drum, right next to where the frame meets the drum, I just took some colored tape. This is actually that floor tape that you can probably see on the ceiling. I bought it from a PE catalog years ago, and I bought it in like every color. And I use it on the ceiling for lining up. But I put it inside here, and I put it in rainbow order: red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Because again, kids are like trained to look for patterns, and they know rainbow order. And so what I say at the end of class is I say, great, take your drum, take it with 2 hands, flip it over, make it like a salad bowl, put it on the ground, put it head down, and then look inside the drum, and what do you see? And so kids raise their hand and say, let's say like, nothing. Okay, yeah, there's nothing sitting in the drum, but what about the drum itself? Okay, well then they notice color. Oh, what colors? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Great. If you have a red drum, what I need you to do is to hold it with both hands, stand up, bring it over to my table, which they can see, and put it head down on the table. So they come and they do that. Usually, like I said, I have one as an example drum, so there are 2 kids doing that. And I make sure, there are some kids who want to like immediately like stack them, and I say, no, each one goes head down on the table. I say, great, if we're following rainbow order, it goes red and then you say orange. Okay, if you have an orange drum, hold it with 2 hands, bring it over to the table and put it inside a red drum. They can handle that, and then from then on, it's really just follow the pattern: red, orange, yellow, green, blue. And they can do that, and by the time I get to green and blue, I say, great, what color comes next in the rainbow? And they're already standing up to bring their drum over. The cool thing about that is that, you know, if somebody started with a drum, the whole experience, they started with a drum, usually it's the kid who did not have a drum who gets to put the drums away. So like they like that because then one kid gets to have it to begin with and one kid gets to put it away. They both feel like they're a little bit special. These drums are Basic Beat. I got them through West Music, and I bought all Basic Beat because I had an Adopt a Classroom money, and my money was enough to buy me 3 sets of 5 drums, and so I bought Basic Beat. The Remo ones are a little bit more expensive. I haven't had both in a classroom to compare apples to apples, but in my old school we had Remo frame drums. They were great. These ones have been great so far, but you know, I mean, it really depends on what you like the best. But the Basic Beats have been great so far. And like I said, all I did was I wrote Woodstock Elementary on it, but also I just put the tape inside. I didn't put it on the outside because I felt like kids would peel it or mess with it or whatever. And then I put it inside because it's really not a place where they're going to grab or touch or peel or mess with. And honestly, they don't notice it until I say turn the drum over and put it head down. And that's the first time they're like, oh, I've got colors. There are a lot of things you could do since you have them color coded. You could say only the blue drums play, or only the green drums play, or only the red drums, or whatever. And that's nice. Katie's asking, if you had enough hand drums for everyone, would you pass them out to everyone? No, probably not. Honestly, I like that it's every other kid, because then there are a couple things about that. If it's every other kid, there's less volume. You can monitor more easily whether kids are being, good to a drum or whether they're hurting a drum. It makes the drumming feel more special when you have a drum. You can realize that when you don't have a drum, you can clap instead. I think there are all these cool benefits, but also if there's a kid who's having trouble, the kid who's next to them who's not also playing can lean over and say, no, this or whatever. But mostly for the sake of management, it's less resources out, more easy for me to monitor, and the rotation makes it feel more special. They don't get bored as quickly because they don't have it every time. I don't know if that makes sense. Katie, that's my immediate right now reaction to if I had one or not. And I don't know, maybe if I had enough drums for everyone I would, but it seems to work really well with every other kid. Nobody feels like they're being short shrifted, again, because it's like 45 seconds that kids have a drum and then we rotate. So nobody feels like, oh, that kid always gets one, but I don't know. It depends on what you have. If you have drums for a whole class, that would be loud, but oh my gosh, you're so blessed. That'd be so cool. Anyway, so that's my thing about drums. And then the cool thing is that once they're on the table, I can just stack them up and set them back on the shelf. and we're done and through, and we can like easily transition. So maybe we go to scattered spaces, maybe we stay in the circle and do a circle game, maybe we do whatever else. But this whole process only takes maybe 10 minutes from start to finish with the drums. It just really depends on how much time I want to spend on that. But it's sort of fun, and that process has worked really well for me. I haven't had a lot of kids who abuse the drum or anything, and if I do, I remember say like, you know, if you're hitting so hard, you're hurting the drum's head, and if you anthropomorphize the instrument, they like treat it a little bit more carefully. And because kids don't have it too long, they don't want to waste their shot. They're not going to throw away their shot, right? So they want to have fun when they have the drum, and I don't have kids hurting or, you know, being too mean. One thing I would say is that today, of course, the day that I was like, hey, let me talk about hand drums, there was a kid who was hitting or whatever when he should be listening or something. And so I just went over and I said, okay, I'll just hold on to that. If you don't want to listen when I'm talking, I'll just take this out of your hand so that it's not going to bother you. And when it's time for you to play again, I'll give it back to you. And then he was like, ooh. And all the other kids were like, I'm going to make sure that I don't play when I'm supposed to be listening. But the other thing I would say is that if you are going to talk or if you are going to mention something about the hand drum, say put it head down on the ground, and then you won't have kids accidentally tapping or playing it because it's not playable. Those are all my quick tips about hand drums for this quick just beginning experience. There are a lot of ways you can use hand drums. I think they're a great instrument to have. So I would absolutely encourage you to get a set of hand drums. You can also, you know, if you don't have the money to buy 15 like I have, buy 5 or buy 3 with the intent that you want to get sets. And I love that they nest like this, but you know, you could get some this year, you get some next year. They're not that expensive one by one. And if you buy sets, sometimes you can get a volume discount or you can get a set discount. But I think hand drums are a great instrument to have, and you can use them for so many different things. If you have ideas about hand drums or this sparked your interest or you have a question or whatever, please leave a question here in the comments, and I'm going to post this video so that when it's done being live, it'll just be on my Facebook page. So if you're watching this later or you still have a question, shoot your question out, and a lot of people might also see it and answer, or I might go back and look. I'm definitely going to go back and look, and I'll try and answer if you have that question. But I just hope this was interesting and sort of shows you the procedure of how I did it and why, so that you can actually maybe use those procedures if that also would work in your classroom, or maybe you could modify it and use your own thing. Thanks so much for watching. Like I said, if you have hand drum questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try and answer them later. Thanks so much. Have a great week.